Okay, great. Well, welcome to the Board of Appeals, the Zoning and Planning Board of Appeals, Monday, November 21st. Thank you all we've got a hybrid situation going on. So in person, we have me, the chair, Tommy. Online, we have our other board members who want to do a little roll call. That would be great. I'll start with Stephen.
Present.
Present. Barb Dorf.
Here.
Oh, bad name. Corey.
Bogan shoots.
Bogan.
Just think, I mean, unfortunately, it's a bow, a gun, and they both shoot. So Bogan shoots.
Oh,
I'm here.
cool.
Never forget that again. Thank you. That was, I love that. And then we have Noel Halverson as well.
Present.
Great. Thank you all for being here. We're going to get into this situation. I need to organize myself real quick to make sure I am going through my script here. So just give me 1 second. Okay. So as we get started, we have the next section, which is basically talking about conflict. So the Board of Appeals, we are an elected, not an elected body. We are a body that is appointed by the mayor. So we are just common citizens here, but we are functioning as a quasi judicial board. So the goal and intent of this board is to hear facts and evidence to support a case. So if you're here as an applicant, we are basically playing the part of judge and jury, listening to your case. The city will be providing some context, some details, alternative ideas represented by John, who some of you have met through the application process. We do have legal here. We have city staff as well. But that's kind of what we're here to do. We will vote. Majority wins here. So it's a 5-person board. 3 votes gets the board approval and you can move forward. 3 votes against the approval says you can't do it the way that you applied. So that's kind of how we function. We will listen to the case. We will give people freedom to talk, but if it does get personal or strays off of the facts or the issues that we are trying to talk about, we need to end that. And I will basically ask the individual speaking to, curb that, hopefully not having to force a mute or anything like that. But if necessary, we'll do that. Any thoughts, questions, concerns about any of that stuff before we get into the meeting? Legal, how do I do? Better?
You're off to a good start. Don't forget to go through the first few.
Yes, I was going to do that when we went to this, but I'm going to talk about the.
Approval of the agenda in the minutes is all I mean.
Oh, I have to do this first, right? The abstaining. First?
Oh, sure, yes.
Okay, so first step, my script now, everybody, is the goal of the Board of Appeals to provide and conduct a hearing that is both fair in form, appearance, and substance. To ensure that this hearing satisfies these goals, each member of the Personnel Committee, this would be the Board of Appeals. It's okay. BOA. Committee, please confirm the following by stating I confirm. 1, I do not have any interest or conflict of interest in this matter. And 2, I have not received any communication from any person or party about this matter.
If I can, Tommy.
Yep.
So the intention ultimately will be to have you all as board members disclose whether you have conflicts on each regular business item. So each variance application, you'll just do a brief conflict. You'll note briefly on the record whether there's any conflict or potential bias for each item. And so that's why these are phrased right now as this matter. Since it is noticed on the agenda right now as one of the items under roll call, assume for purposes of the question right now at this particular moment that we're talking about either of the 2 regular business items on the agenda.
Got it. Okay, so moving forward, we'll get a confirm for each individual item before we start hearing it. But for right now, based on the current agenda, we will do it for all.
Yes.
And then we'll adjust the agenda moving forward.
Yes.
Copy that. Okay, so you guys got that. So this is for, like we typically do, for both items that are on the agenda. Does anybody have any? I'll go around the board so we can get that on the record. Starting with Corey, bow gun shoots.
I can attest I have not been to the property and I have no conflict.
Okay, Noel.
Yeah, nor do I. No conflict, no visit.
Thank you, Noel. Stephen.
I have no conflict and I can't even walk right now, so I haven't visited.
Thanks, Stephen. And then Barb,
Can I just respond? I confirm.
yes, you can.
I'm going to do that. I confirm.
Yes, and by the way, that is actually true. You can just say that. I confirm. Thank you, Barb. I confirm as well. I don't have any conflicts as well. All right, perfect. I will then move on to the next item, which would be the approval of the agenda for tonight,
Move to approve.
right?
Second,
Was that Noel? Was that you?
yeah,
Thank you, Noel. So I have a motion to approve the agenda by Barb and a second by Noel. All those in favor say aye.
aye,
Aye.
All the ayes have it. So the agenda is approved for tonight. And then let's go over the approval of the minutes for last month on the 17th. Any adjustments, needs to change anything on those minutes that came through? If not, a motion.
so moved,
All right.
Second.
All right, so I have a motion to approve the minutes by Noel and a second by Barb. All those in favor to approve the minutes, say aye.
aye,
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. All right, approval is of minutes is done. Doing good?
Mhm.
Okay, so now we are going to get into the actual regular business. As we work through this, typically we've opened the floor for the whole thing. And are you okay with that process, or do you want us to not do that anymore? That's okay, all right. So we would get in, before we get into that, let's go ahead and take a motion to open the floor for the hearing for the whole
Move
thing.
to open the floor for both.
Second.
Corey, was that a second from you?
Yes.
Thank you. So I got a motion to open the floor for Barb, second by Corey. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, okay. Great. I didn't say that. I did say that, but I didn't mean to say that. It was approved. All right, perfect. Floor is open. All right, let's jump into this. First thing. Give me 1 second. This and then this.
Yes.
Right, but not typically you would want me to read this, then go over the confirmed, then do this, right?
Yes.
Copy that, okay. All right, so first agenda item number 1, we have appeal 2237 by Victoria Mora, property owner. It proposes the addition of a parking space in a low-density residential R1 district at 913 North Van Buren Street. The applicant requests to deviate from the following requirements in chapter 44, Green Bay zoning code, section 44559. I don't know. Maximum impervious surface requirements and section 44-554, side yard setback requirements. And then just for the sake of a record, Lindsay
Mhm.
is going to do her, she is not an active translator, but she can get through Spanish a bit. So she's going to be acting and helping with a bit of translation. They've already had a bit of touch base just to kind of make sure that she understands she's not a complete translator. And then we have Logan here who will be acting as counsel for this agenda item. Okay, any questions or concerns on any of that from the board? Okay, great. All right, we will have the city staff first. They're going to present on this. They're going to go over some details for the board so that we can understand what we're looking at, go over some details. And then the applicant will have the opportunity to then present any evidence to the board, and then we will go into deliberation. So we'll let Lindsay get situated. And do you want to translate any of that here? Okay, 1 second, everybody.
El empleado de la ciudad va a hablar primero y entonces pueden decir lo que quieren al grupo y luego todos van a hablar y hacer una decisión.
Okay,
Bueno, pero él va a hablar primero.
en inglés.
Voy a intentar a decirte lo mejor que puedo.
Okay, so John, on behalf of the staff, she's going to take us through kind of the details of this, get ourselves situated, and then we'll jump into testimony. Go ahead, John.
Okay, so the property you're looking at is on North Van Buren. It's a small property here. The star is taking up most of the property. So here's a zoom in of the property itself. It's just over 3,500 square feet, a very small property. At play, the applicant is looking to go ahead and add on a parking stall alongside the alley at the property. So staff has had discussions with the property owner, being back in late summer, early fall about this, because building inspection had come out to the site. And the property itself, as you can see right here from a photo from 2019, has a drive that is not paved, that comes off the alley. That's not legal. So what they're looking to go ahead and do is to put in a paved driveway parking stall at the site. Unfortunately, though, there are two issues that come into play. One, noting back to the site, impervious surface requirements offer a max of 50% impervious on a parcel. Already, this site exceeds that number with an additional parking stall or not. Two would be the side yard setback on the site. Because this is just a parking stall and not a driveway itself, it needs to go ahead and be out of the setback area. Unfortunately, to go ahead and make this work on the site for them, we explored different alternatives to try to make an additional parking stall work on the site. The only possible way to do a parking stall on this property is to place it where you see here, beyond the front yard setback and along the alleyway, and I have it parallel to the alleyway. There is no way to go ahead and do it perpendicular due to depth on the lawns. Additionally, on the at the site, this is going back to a photo from about 2017. If you go back in the street view back to 2007, you will always see some driveway marks and a car parked alongside the northern part of the property, like you see right here. If you go to the southern part of the property, there is room for two stalls, but not a garage, and there's no room off to the side itself. So the only spot to go ahead and make the additional parking is along the north side of the building, that's over here where folks have parked, but they do not meet code when it comes to impervious and side yards, so they are seeking relief because of this.
Perfect. Thank you. Any questions from the board members before we get to the applicant's testimony about this? Okay. Looks like everybody's good to go. All right.
May I have-
Yes, of course.
Explicó el problema y dijo que está de acuerdo que el único opción que tienen es poner el concreto. Sí, y por eso está diciendo al grupo que es han buscado otras posibilidades, pero no hay ninguna. Sí.
¿Con concreto sí?
Sí.
Sí, sí. ¿En el lado? Sí,
Sí, en el lado, sí. Can you pull the picture back up, please? Está bien.
Sí. Entonces concreto ahí.
En el
Ajá.
derecho.
¿Dónde está el carro? ¿Dónde está el carro? Poner concreto.
Sí.
Ok,
Sí.
ok.
Bueno.
Ok.
No. ¿Tienen cualquier cosa que quieren decirle al grupo o no?
No, pues ya si nos permiten eso, nosotros echamos el concreto ahí.
Sí.
Sí.
Ah.
Podemos dejar una base de pasto para allá que no necesitamos y lo que necesitamos echarle o todo completo.
Sí. So they will they can put the concrete there. They had either tried or they already did. I apologize, my Spanish isn't perfect. Had tried to put more gravel there, but that's not compliant. So are you,
And I can add,
please?
so the reason why this came to case here is the gravel itself does not meet code, and thus there has to be an improvement, i.e. the hardscape to go ahead and change to an asphalt concrete, not the gravel. While you can keep a non-conformity like gravel over the course of time, if it does not keep up with the amount of gravel on site, at some point, you need to replace it with a hardscape. And that's why we're at the situation that we're at right now, where city inspection staff deemed it had gone too far out of non-conformity and needed to be improved.
Dice que tiene que ser concreta.
Concreto de que vayan a echarle de profesionales, ¿verdad?
Sí, sí.
Profesionales, sí.
Sí.
No, que ahorita tenemos dinero para
Sí, pero pues si nos damos tiempo unos 3 meses, ¿pueden darnos unos 3 meses para que lo echemos?
Quizá.
tenemos dinero ahorita para.
Sí, espérate.
Tenemos dinero ahorita para.
Sí, sí, de todos modos, yo me hago cargo.
Bueno, they are planning on having someone professional come in and do the concrete, but it might take a couple months to get the money and the contractor arranged.
Ok,
Okay.
ok, sí, yo me hago cargo
Bueno,
que quede
bien.
bonito, que quede cuadradito. así como
es posible que van a tener preguntas. Vamos a ver, y entonces tienen que hablar y decidir todavía.
Oh, sí.
Momento. Questions?
Is there anything else that she would like to present to us in terms of speaking to the three, on our application? The physical characteristics, I mean, obviously we can, for the sake of translation, we can maybe put that together, but I just want to make sure she's had the opportunity to present her whole case before we get to questions or anything.
Sure. So are you asking why they need the third?
Yeah,
So you're trying to ask why this is a unique hardship, why this is a unique property limitation, and what is the protection of public interest for this? Could she present on any of those? In her own words,
Okay.
to what that would be?
The first question, again, sorry, just because I don't do planning.
Yeah.
What was the question?
And could she describe anything that she wants any further as far as an unnecessary hardship? So what does that mean as far as the code itself is putting a hardship on the property that is unique to this
Sure.
parcel that is unnecessary in the sense that it can't the actual dimensions go ahead and have a limitation on it that are not necessary for the property itself.
Sure. Quieren saber por qué es necesario tener los tres espacios y por qué no hay otro sitio en el property.
de parque, porque la calle, pues te dan piques. de parque en la calle. Y necesitan esa base, como ahorita que está mi hijo, quedamos con 3 carros, 2 para salir. Porque si no están, como lo será, necesitamos un espacio para estar. Ahorita, con el tiempo, ¿verdad? Pero pues es lo mismo ahorita que después.
Sí.
Ya lo que se arregla ahorita, pues es, ¿verdad?
Sí. Bueno, sorry, they have an adult son living with them, which is why they have 3 on site. They don't have, there's no space on the, as I understand it, there's no space on the road. So they have difficulty getting, each of the cars out in the right order. And there's not anywhere else on the property that they could put a third space because the property is already, everything is already very close to the property lines. What were the other questions?
If you wanted to expand on, so I think you have already expanded on unique property limitation and protection of the public interest.
Okay. ¿Hay alguna razón porque eso crearía algún problema para el público o algo así? Bueno, puedes hablar o dar unas razones para que es bueno para el público.
Pues para el público, bueno, porque cuando nosotros agarramos esa casa, ese era el parqueadero, entonces nosotros arreglamos acá pero el parqueadero nos lo entregaron con ese parqueadero, y no, ¿verdad? Pues ¿verdad?
Sí.
Desde que habrá veces que no tendrá el carro ahí, porque no esté bien, pero mientras esté o llegue un carro, pues va a estar ahí.
Entonces es más seguro que está al lado de la casa en vez de en la calle o algo así. Las coches, quiero decir.
Sí, sí. Bueno, en la calle, pues no, nada, que va a haber espacio. Pero en el costado que es one way,
Sí.
en ese
Ah,
era
sí,
para-
sí, bueno.
Era one way, que viene nomás para los salideros de las casas. No es calle, es one way.
Bueno. Is that an alley? It's,
Yes.
but she said it's one way. So it's actually safer to have the car like as far onto the property. So that it's not potentially like interfering with the. I apologize, guys, I'm not, just keep saying I'm not a translator. But with the gravel as it's changed, it sounds like it might have gotten closer to the alley. So that's something that they would be able to rectify with the moving the parking spot, I guess is how I understood her to say.
Right, and I can expand on that. We talked as far as alternative options. There is sufficient space to go ahead and have a car parked between the alley and the house itself, as long as it's parallel to the house. If you were to go ahead and change it the opposite way to be perpendicular, that would not work. It would stick out to the alley itself.
There's enough space to do it, but it's still within the setback. And
Correct.
still the two variations are still needed.
The actual
Can't be-
physical, yes, correct, yeah.
Okay,
The actual
sorry.
physical space is there to go ahead and place a vehicle there, but it does not meet the
Got it,
requirements, yes.
Cool. For this next section, when we get to the rotation, how do you, because again, we're gonna be talking. Do you want us to pause after each one so you can do it? Do you want to try and translate as we go? How, I should do your best to translate as we go. I shouldn't say translate, like assuming.
Bueno, ¿quieren que intento decirles qué dice cada persona o más o menos que deciden al fin?
Al final.
Bueno, just go ahead and do it and I'll let her know what happens.
Okay. Okay, so she knows the next step we're gonna discuss. If we have any other questions, we'll come to you.
Yes,
Okay.
van a discutir y si tienen más preguntas, van a preguntarles.
Okay. All right, board members. So again, I think Stephen, were you with us last month, Stephen? I don't think he was. So we-
I was not, but I've watched the training and the video twice, so I'm up to speed.
Great, thank you. So again, we're trying, Noel, I see your hand, but just a reminder to, if we do decide to grant a variance, we are going, you can't see on camera, but legal has asked us to really be able to speak to the 5 different things: preservation of intent, exceptional circumstances, preservation of property rights, absence of detriment, and hardship. Again, do we have to be perfect at that yet? No, it's just a reminder for us to be able to say, hey, on the record, we feel that this variance can be approved because it fits the requirement of these things. Again, if we cover the 3 things on the application, we're in theory covering the 5 things, right? But legal would like us to get closer to the 5 things versus the 3 things. I know it seems weird, but we're working on all of it with applications, all that stuff. So we will go through this. I will go with Noel first, then Corey for the hand raising online. Thank you for that. Noel, are you good to go first here?
Sure. Just a question on, given that what we're considering is, parking someplace that wouldn't otherwise be allowed. Is there any way, instead of parking along the alley, to extend the driveway, even if it shaves off the more of the side yard on the north end of the parcel, to just have a driveway that's 3 cars deep?
So going back to this photo right here, what's in play is
Porch.
right, there's a porch that's back there, which will go back to here. The porch extends out from and it's an entryway into the building itself back that way. So we explored that and that'd be fairly impractical to go ahead.
Yeah, I thought that might be the case, but I couldn't make it out clearly in the aerial. Thanks.
Noel, was that it?
Yep.
Okay, great. I'll go Corey next, then Stephen.
More question for John from a clarification standpoint. If it had stayed like gravel that was contained and not causing an issue, would this ever have been coming up with a requirement for a hard surface?
So that was non-conforming. So this comes to anybody who happens to have gravel driveways. If you go ahead and maintain it over the course of time, it can stay that way in a non-conforming sense. However, as noted from that photo back in 2017, it's been a gravel driveway for years and years. And you do note in the progression over time, even on street view, you can see there's less gravel. So with that, it was determined that it wasn't sufficient enough to go ahead and meet the criteria to stay non-conforming, and thus the improvement is necessary either to get rid of the gravel altogether or put in a hardscape surface through this variance request.
So had it been maintained, they would have not been put into the position to get the hardscape?
Had it stated to the satisfactory requirements of that, yes, it would have.
Okay. Okay, that answers it. Thanks.
Okay, Stephen?
Sorry. So I think you answered one of my questions about what would happen if we didn't approve it. One of the questions would be then, who owns the alleyway? Is that a city property?
The alley is public right of way, yes.
Okay. Who maintains the alleyway? Is that the city as well?
Correct.
And I assume that there's no, from your testimony earlier, John, I assume that there's no concerns about snow plowing or maintenance of that driveway with a car over there?
No, looked at a year, if you go back through the aerials for the past 15 years, there's been a car parked there for.
Okay, fair enough.
Aerial.
Okay, thank you very much.
Cool. Barb, you didn't have your hand raised, but I'm going around the horn. Do you have any questions at all?
No, I don't. I feel like I can, address each one of these 5 with just the information I have, unless I'm missing something.
Okay. And remember, again, I'm doing a lot of reminding because again, we're all learning this, but if it is a denial, you don't need to explain why beyond, I don't feel that it met these elements. You don't need to list why, you just need to say, I don't feel it did. If you were approving the variance, we need to speak to why we feel it fits why it fits that criteria, correct? Correct? Sorry. Yes?
Yes, correct.
Right, okay, cool. Yes, John.
And every individual member does not need to state their own. You can, once it's established, if somebody agrees, they can go ahead and say, I agree to that point.
Correct.
So.
Okay, I don't have any questions. I'll speak first. Obviously, I definitely think the lot itself has some constraints on it. However, I don't personally feel that the proposed application, I can speak to how it fits those 5 different elements. It seems like it's a self-imposed issue on that lot. There's 2 spots. I feel like that keeps with the preservation of intent. So I'm leaning towards more of a denial in my vote. That just kind of starting us off. Open to hearing everybody else's thoughts as well.
So I'll do counterpoint if you want. So, when I was looking through it, I mean, and I understand your point. I can see where you're coming from, because I thought preservation of intent, that it wouldn't be inconsistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the regulations for the district in which it's requested, because a lot of people have 3 cars, and the lot is so, it goes to number 2. The exceptional circumstances are that lot is so narrow, and there isn't an opportunity to put that parking spot anywhere else. And for preservation and enjoyment of the same substantial property rights which are possessed by the other properties. I don't know what all the other properties look like, but I know a lot of homes can park 3 cars comfortably. I don't know how it would create a detriment to the alley or anything. I don't think it would. And I wasn't necessarily seeing it as self-imposed unless we're deciding people can't have more than 2 cars. And if they can't, then it's self-imposed. But if they can, then it isn't self-imposed. So that's what I got so far.
Yeah, good points.
I'm with Barb.
I'm torn.
Go ahead, Corey, sorry.
I was just gonna say, I mean, it's self-imposed in the fact that they don't necessarily need a third car for a standard family, but because of the extended family with the divorced son back, that makes it more of a self-imposed situation where, I mean, unfortunately, that might be my feeling in that case. Had they maintained it at gravel, that's where I'm kind of hung up, because in a sense, the city is forcing them to upgrade it to a conforming situation. But had they maintained it as gravel, they would have been able to stick with the non-conforming guidelines. So that's where I'm torn by that situation. But I'm more on, like, if it was just them wanting to put it in place, I would definitely have said no, because it doesn't fit the rules. But I'm torn because of that situation.
So looking it over, I agree with Barb on the first 2 points. The third point, I actually think that the hardship part with the son is actually immaterial. But I do think that this house has had a tradition of having that as a parking spot, and has, as Corey said, has had it for years, and had it been maintained, it would have been just left alone. However, the penalty for that is essentially having to pave it. I think that that's more than sufficient. And I also, just looking at it from a real politics situation here, people are going to park there whether we tell them they can or not. That spot will simply be a muddy rut, at least in my thought. Be it maybe not with this family, maybe with the next family. If we look 50 years down the road and what would be best for the neighborhood, for the current family and for the next families, having that spot properly paved, at least in my mind, is that's in the public interest. So that's where I'm going with that. I don't think the situation with the son, if that was the only factor, that's temporary and self-inflicted. But I think at this point, we can't go back in time and maintain the gravel. And if they're willing to put in the hard surface, I think that's actually an improvement that would be useful.
So-
May I- Real quick, Noel, I'll come back to you in a second. If a car is parked there, because we don't have exact, maybe we do, and I missed it, exact measurements of the slab that would technically go in. Is there any concern about the alley right away if a car is parked there, which is, we understand it's been parked there for a long time?
Right.
We're also dealing with a setback, so it's impervious and setback.
Yeah.
In terms of having something there and a large vehicle traveling through there, is there any concern about of those distances or anything like that from a safety perspective?
Right. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop up the screen bigger here.
I guess, have there been any reported accidents in that
I mean,
situation?
I kind of asked this question already about maintaining the alley and people using the alley.
Yeah.
I assume that was taken into account.
Right. So
If that's what you're asking, I did not understand that was what you were asking. I apologize.
Yeah.
And the alley itself, as far as the distance from the building to the alley itself, is about 10 feet. So our standard parking stall size is a minimum of 8 feet, up to 9 as far as between compact and non-compact stalls. So yes, we can park right there.
Okay, cool. Noel, you got your hand raised?
Yeah, just an idea on this. If paving this spot, it represents an improvement, maybe we let each neighbor, as they're forced to pave some of their formal gravel, they get to name one of the other neighbors and have them do the same, because it looks like there's a lot of gravel in that neck of the woods over there. But no, I just wanted to say, I think from the standpoint of the unique characteristic of this lot, and the intent and preservation thereof, of their use and that sort of thing, and then the public interest, I think we're meet those tests. And I don't know if everybody will go with me on this, but I'd be willing to make a motion, I think, at this point, relative to the request.
And I'd be willing to second it
Okay. So I can
if it proves.
Here's what I want to say then. So I think the small dimensions, the really small dimensions of this parcel create a unique situation where complying with the ordinances creates an unreasonable hardship. And we might expect a resident to be able to park the vehicles of 3 drivers. I think if we start getting into arguments that say, you know, okay, 2 cars is enough for any household or something like that, we're getting into really weird territory, and I don't think we should be in there. I don't think it's unreasonable for 3 drivers in a family to each have a vehicle and try and park them on their lot. That's something I think folks should be able to expect, of being able to do that where they live, and not, you know, that's not necessarily something we should curtail. And then the big one for me was really the public interest and in terms of the alley itself, thinking, oh, is there going to be a problem with snow removal or other things like that? But then when I heard that folks have been parking in that spot for at least a decade or more, looking back at old photos, then it seems to me that there isn't a detriment to the public interest. And I think, echoing Steve's comments, that actually that, you know, paving this might actually be an improvement to the area. I would move that we approve the variances as requested.
Okay.
I would second that.
So Nola's motion to approve the variance as requested, Barb has seconded. And again, as we work on these muscles, while he's not necessarily going through 1 through 5, I feel like his comments have covered, at least in detail for the record, a lot of these things. Or do you want him to specifically now recast all of that with the motion? I feel like he's covered it in overall.
I would just maybe say that for some of the reasons that Barb had also mentioned as well in her statement as well, would be sufficient to say that she covered a lot of it as well. So if you want, maybe just incorporate some of her statements.
Okay, did you hear that, guys?
I did.
We're
I did.
trying to be super specific for the record. And again, I understand on the application, there's the 3 things. And then I don't know if you guys remember, but there's these 5 things. They have it up on the screen right now. Well, it's listed as 6 things, but
Yeah. Had they been on the screen while I was trying to formulate a motion, I might have been able to do it that way. But
Yeah.
maybe that can help as we're talking in the future.
I think you covered preservation of intent well. I think you covered 2 well. 3 could use some clarity for me.
I
5,
think I covered 3 pretty well.
he needs to incorporate, just say, hey, and I include Barb's comments in my motion.
I'm just being technical.
We're being real technical.
In the sense that Noel is the one that proposed the motion, that he should also incorporate, you know, what Barb had mentioned earlier. And
I also thought you said, John, that if we fulfilled the top 3, the other ones were pretty much fulfilled. At least that's what you said in the training. And I know this because I watched it
Yeah.
twice now.
Clarifying that some more. So we want to have the 3 here for the public when they're writing, and we'll get to this later on, their application, because this is some legalese, it's more technical writing right here. And we're not trying to make this completely technical when somebody's writing out their application. If they hit those 3 things, they should be able to hit these other 5 that come into play. The 6th being a condition maybe placed on the variance. That's up to you guys as a board, if you want to place any additional variances onto, or any additional language onto a variance approval. So when we're asking the 3, when we say to the public itself, there could be questions. It's just trying to be more of a general idea to go ahead and should be able to go ahead and accomplish these 5. That as a board, since you've been a part of this and can go ahead and you've been part of a number of variances, can better articulate those 5 findings.
Yeah,
Okay.
if the chair would be willing, and if Barb would be willing, I mean, we can take away that motion, and I can try and restate it in conformance with these points here.
I don't think he needs to restate the motion. I think just clarify 3 and 5 a little bit more in terms of your dialogue, and then we'll have it up on the screen for the next one.
Yeah, I think I think all those things I said, and I think implicit in my motion, if not explicit, is that you know, this is reasonable for folks to be able to expect to be able to park their cars on their property, and we're preserving that right, and that you know, the compliance with the code, you know, the difficulty in compliance, I don't believe is self-imposed. It's just people trying to live and park and carry on with their business. And they're not, you know, they're not arguing against the cost here or the economic basis of this. They're perfectly willing to pave that section of parking slab, so.
Thank you, Noel. That's great.
Good.
You're getting thumbs up across the board. So good job on that. Thank you. I know we're being technical, but we're just trying to work on all this. So, okay, good. So I have a motion on the floor to approve the variance. We've got on the record how the motion is being put forward to cover the 5 different parts of this. I have a second by Barb. Any more discussion from the board before we go ahead and take a vote? Okay, so all those in favor of approving the motion, say aye.
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 All those opposed?
Sorry, I was still wavering, but I'm with the eye. to
Oh,
approve.
late on the gun. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm trying.
I love it. So we have a 4-1 vote, which means that the variance has been approved. So again,
So who voted no?
Tommy,
Oh, you did.
I did, yes.
Oh, Tommy did. Okay, thank you.
Corey, he jumped me right when I
He
was,
was-
he said,
Okay,
and I was like, wait, yeah.
thank you.
Yep. So just continue to work with the city on plans, make sure you get the proper permits to do everything, so we don't get back here having to undo work potentially that was done improperly.
Sí, han dicho sí, pueden poner el correcto y simplemente continuar trabajando con la ciudad para asegurar que todo está bien.
Avisar que ya está. Cuando ya lo hagamos, venimos a decir.
Lo siento,
Oh,
me puedes decir un poquito distinto.
cuando esté listo,
Sí,
venir Cami, a avisar.
creo que sí, pero no estoy segura. Bueno, John, when they have the work done, does somebody from the city come out to make sure that it's
Done properly,
conforming
yeah.
or-
So
okay.
there still needs to be an actual site plan submitted.
Mhm.
And with that, when they do the site plan, they'll say the variance is granted. And so-
Okay.
And then when the work is being done, there'll still be an inspection to make sure it meets the requirements.
Okay. Bueno, vamos vacío. You guys can.
Are you good? I wanted to wait just in case you want to come back. Are you still good?
Yep.
Kind of
Yeah,
moving forward?
I'll be back in a
Great,
moment.
okay, thank you. Gracias.
Thank you.
Buenas noches.
I'll be thank you.
Oh, very good.
I know.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Thank you.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, everybody good? We're gonna move on to agenda item number 2 here. So appeal number 22-38, Brandon Robidek. And Robert E. Lee and Associates, the applicant on behalf of the Harlan Brothers LLP property owner proposes a building expansion in a general industrial district at 1518 State Street. And John will go over the deviation request, so I won't list that here. Before we start, do we have the applicant on the phone or the Zoom call? So I should say, sorry. Fifteen 18 State Street applicants, if you're here, go ahead and unmute. Just let us know you're present so we can kind of start hearing this item.
Jared and Brandon, there.
I see their names. I see Brandon's
Can you hear
name.
me?
Hey, there we go, Brandon. We hear you now.
Sorry about that. Yes, I'm on to give a statement and answer any questions.
Okay, Brandon, do you mind just speaking your name and then just listing your address for us?
Brandon Robitek, 1250 Centennial Center Boulevard, Hobart, Wisconsin, 54155.
Great, thank you. And is there are you the one presenting the case today?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, what we're gonna do is, I'm not sure if you heard on the first one, we're gonna have staff kind of take us through the details of the property, and then we'll get into your testimony, and then we'll do deliberation after that, okay?
Okay.
We should also have our witnesses swear in, if we can have that happen too.
Oh, even the applicants have to do that too?
Yeah, the staff and applicants should be swearing in to make sure that our testimony is factual.
Ah,
If we can just
wow,
include that
okay,
part.
another layer too. All right, cool. I do remember that going over.
I know it's another couple sentences, I know we
No,
don't say that, but it
this
is
is
a couple
all-
more sentences, I apologize for that.
It's all good. So swear in
But once we do that, then you don't have to continuously do it then, at
But
least for the.
for
item.
each item though, right?
Each item.
They should swear in for each item.
We should do that.
Okay, and since I don't have a script, basically, do you swear that your testimony is factual and accurate? You know,
That will work.
okay, all right, this is all new process.
Acknowledgeably.
Give us, I will start with John, so before you present, do you swear that all of the testimony and that you give will be factual and accurate and truthful?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. And then it was Brandon. Do you swear that all the testimony you will be presenting is factual, truthful? Yeah, I guess that's it. We'll have a better script next.
Yes.
All right, thanks. Okay, good. All right, so staff is gonna start, then Brandon, you're up, and then we'll go from there. If there's public that needs to hear, we'll drop them into here. Okay,
Hi, everybody. So this property is on over on State Street. That's between State and Broadway, just north of Liberty, just north of the GP big plant down that way. So this is Halron Brothers. They're looking for some relief here with the impervious surface on the property. They're actually doing a reduction for the proposed plans to go from 97% impervious to 93% impervious on the property, looking to expand the building. But this goes back into our conforming and non-conforming issue we had with the last property. You're doing an expansion of the building, you need a site plan, you need to go ahead and keep up with the code itself. Code states 80% impervious max. So this is the property along Broadway Street View. This is the view of it back along State Street. This is the area in particular that would become pervious with the plantings proposed on the back of it. So as you can see here, this is a site plan for the property. You'll note the area here in the lighter gray would be the addition to the property itself with the building. That's impervious and top of impervious. So no real issues there as far as the building itself. We're just going back to an ask here from the applicant to allow to still go past 80%. So I had some conversations with the applicants. Knowing what they have right now as far as uses go on the property, it would be hard as an alternative to go ahead and try to find 80%, needing to have spaces to go ahead and turn around large trucks to go ahead and service this overall development. And finding this new green space in the back has some merit. So while there could be potential to go ahead and maybe get that number down a bit lower, we don't see there a way to like get down to below 80%, and that's where they're at right now as far as what they're proposing to go ahead and do on the site. This is another image as far as their overall building, what it is right now. The crosshatch would be the addition to the overall building itself. And then the applicant also did a few elevations of what the addition would be to the building itself. So the ask here is to still allow for impervious to go ahead and be over the threshold of 8% with a building addition. There's one thing we do want to note here as staff. If the board does determine that there happens to be a variance that should be granted for this site to allow it, we do request the idea that conditions may be placed upon the variance to put it to the use to just allow the existing use on the site. What we as a staff recognize, the impervious numbers are going down, but let's just say this is a brand new property that had a brand new use. Mind, your variances are on the site in perpetuity to last forever. We don't want to keep this as if this were to be a different change in use, a 93% threshold for the property. If this was a whole different use, we feel it would be very appropriate to go back down to existing levels, but we understand with what's happening right here. If you feel it's appropriate, the hardship is met, just to go ahead and potentially add that on. It's still your call, you don't have to, but we did want to note that as far as this use on this property.
I have a question on that, but I'll ask it later. Okay. Okay, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Well, maybe I can ask it now.
I have one.
Go ahead, Barb.
So I heard you say like the number 93%, 97% way back at the beginning. So is it already over the 80%?
Correct. It is already over the 8% right now at 97%.
So now it's gonna go back, it's gonna go actually down to 93% and get more closer to the 80%.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, thanks. That's it. That's what I thought, but I wasn't sure.
My question is, we've dealt with this before where we tried to do some sort of condition similar to what you're recommending. But we struggled in terms of how to attach that. Was it the sale of the property? You know, like how do you attach a condition like
Right.
that it flags something in the city to say, hey, now that variance is not approved anymore?
Right, it's existing use is what we're looking at. So if this were to change from its existing use right here, as far as, and I'll ask Brandon for the exact term they have right here. Let's just say let's go ahead and change this into storage and warehouse distribution for, so that could be something that's completely different as far as what they're doing right here.
Right, the flower
That's,
shop.
they'd have to go ahead and have a new site plan at that point. And at that point, there'd already be a trigger then to go ahead and say, hold up. They need to go ahead and meet the requirements as far as general industrial and 80% at that point to move forward. So as long as this keeps on staying, whether it's owned by Halron or anybody else, they're keeping the same use. Understood. It can keep on staying that way. It changes uses. Definitely feel like it would be appropriate to go ahead and take that impervious down to 80% at that point.
Okay, I understand. Corey, I saw your hand raised. I see Steven's currently, so I'll start with Steven. Corey, if you were having a question, put your hand back up, but we'll start with Steven.
So what I would ask John is, can you define me for use? So we know Halron's an oil company. So do you mean if a non-oil company moves in there or a company that won't use semis? How do you define use?
We define use by what the actions are the business is running inside the property itself.
So if I buy the building from Halron and I sell Beanie Babies, but I claim I occasionally get a truck, is that close enough?
No, it's not. No.
How would you know?
So if somebody were to go ahead, fair question, Stephen, as far as that goes. If somebody were coming in here to go ahead and do a change of use on the property itself, if it was not one of the, I'm gonna restate this. As a city, we're still trying to go ahead and figure out, you know, with logging to make certain that places may change their uses, and we're still keeping up to date as far as knowing, oh, there's a change of use in this.
Right.
It needs to stay with the zoning that's intended for
Right.
the district.
Right.
You know, how would we know if somebody is coming in to make improvements to the property itself because they're doing
Yeah.
they would come in and
I-
say, you're trying to go ahead and perform X function. At that point, it does not meet with what was done in the past. And at that point, they need to meet existing zoning code.
Well, I guess I guess my point is less about how do you find out? It's more about how do you define use? Because if I tell you that I'm going, because their main justification here, if I'm reading the application correctly, is so that they have enough room to turn a semi around.
Right.
Regardless of what business I put in there, if I tell you I'm gonna have semis coming in and out, isn't that the same use?
I would suggest no. It depends on what, so when we're looking at uses itself based on the zoning code, there'll be a litany of
Okay.
actual business types themselves. If it states as the same type of business, that's fine. It's not so much a truck entering or not entering the property.
Okay,
There may be, and it's not as though to say that if you were to approve this and you were to put a condition on it, that another business that is using a general industrial type of use wouldn't have the same type of hardship that is applicable to it. It's just that we'd want to, at that point, still go through a variance application like this to go ahead and prove that it is applicable. So just like Halron will need to go ahead and Robert E. Lee will need to prove this with a testimony, you need a hardship, so would they, somebody else with a new. So you're proving it right now with their existing use to the property.
right.
Somebody came in and wanted to do wholesale plant, prove it to this board then, event as well, that you need to go ahead and say with a 93% impervious surface at that point. Or
Okay. Yep, I see where you're going with that. The problem I'm having here is that this whole district is zoned light industrial. So technically, anything I put in there is going to be light industrial, right? In order to conform with the major code to begin with. You don't seem to have a definition of what they're doing. And how it's classified or how that classification would change. You also don't seem to take into account that if we put that requirement on a business like Halron, if they go to sell this property, they're going to be legally required to disclose that. And that may interfere with their ability to actually sell the property later. And I know we're not looking at necessarily at economic problems. And don't get me wrong, I completely understand what you're trying to do in terms of making sure that we get this compliance. And I'm with you on that. Okay. I understand the intent. The problem is the way you're stating it, I don't think you're going to hold up in court at all with that, because you of what is the use now or what another business's acceptable use would be. Now, if you make it just contingent upon Halron selling it, that's one thing. But if you make it on use, I think you're going to have an issue in the long term. And I'm not comfortable giving you that part of it, at least myself, because you don't seem to be able to articulate it, and maybe we need to talk about that more later, but it's too amorphous. I mean, if I tell you I have to turn trucks around in there, I mean, I don't see how, if I'm selling wholesale plants or selling oil like Halron, what the difference is. They're both light industrial. So I think you need better justification, although I really do understand and agree with your intent.
Okay, cool, thank you. Noel, you had your hand raised and now you don't. Are you in a good spot? Do you have any questions before we hear a test?
Stephen beat it to death, so I was kind of along the same lines where he was going, and thinking about other ways to maybe phrase that if we get to that point, and maybe we should get further down in the conversation before we.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should move on, hear testimony, and then see if we land back at that idea, because we might not even approve it. I do want to point out too, again, I think we all understand this, but just understand that because they're doing new stuff, even though it's going down by 4%, we are still approving 93% over the 80%, right? So that's really, it's a new application in theory in our heads, right? Saying hey, someone is using this and they're trying to ask to go over 80%, right? So just kind of reframing it in your head a bit, I think is important. Any other stuff before we hear from the applicant? We're still doing good? All right, good. Okay, great. Brandon, thank you for letting us have a little bit of that debate there. I appreciate your patience. Go ahead and take us through your testimony, your case here, and we'll listen. If we have questions, we'll do that, and then we'll go into a bit of deliberation. So thank you for your patience. Go ahead.
No problem, no problem.
We did swear you in. Sorry. Question by legal.
Are we all good?
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Halron is, like John said, proposing to construct a building addition on their parcel. They've been in this location for many, many years,
I
and
can't
would like
hear
to continue to.
hear it, Brandon. Brandon, it's very garbled. I'm sorry, I can't do.
Okay, I will try to speak clearer. Is this better?
Yeah.
A lot better.
Yeah, so Halron is proposing to construct a building addition on their parcel. They've been at this location for many years and would like to continue to expand at this location, but need the exceedance in hard surface to continue to operate with the truck flow through the site, and just truck parking in general, to keep their business operating at a functional level. The existing impervious surface is 97%, like John stated. We are reducing that to 93% and getting rid of some of the existing hard surface that isn't used. So just trying to clean up that site a little bit with respect to the impervious coverage. The proposed building will be utilized for on-site production, and the owner is proposing to store some of his additional vehicles inside that addition at night. He's been experiencing some high theft rate on the property, so he would just like to get the vehicles out of or out, basically indoors, just to prevent that a little bit more. By granting this variance, the public interest will not be harmed. as it will provide a safer work environment for all their employees and will reduce the potential theft in the area. Just looking at the surrounding area, there isn't any currently undeveloped area that borders their property that they could potentially look at expanding that way. They are butting up to road right away on both the east and west side, and then rail right away on the south side, and then an existing property business on the north side. So that's another thing that they've looked into. As of right now, if there's any questions, both myself and the owners are, I believe they're still on the call to answer them. So if you have any questions for us.
Okay, and just for the sake of procedure, Brandon, we'll direct questions to you if there is more testimony that is needed from other people on the calls. We'll call that public testimony. That'll be a shift a bit for us. We'll swear them in, get their address, stuff like that, right? Swear the public in. No?
If they're actually there with the applicant, it
Yeah.
could be one of the applicant's witnesses, in which case it would be part of the applicant's presentation and not part of the public comment.
Copy that. Sorry about that. Right, learning. So if the other people on the call are part of like a witness, right? You're calling a witness and you like to have them give testimony, then we would just need to swear them in and hear their testimony as part of your application, and it's not part of the public discourse. So same phrase differently. Okay. Any questions well, do you want to have them speak at this point, Brandon, as part of your testimony?
I believe at this point, they're good. So no.
Okay. Great. Thank you for that. Any questions for the applicant based on his testimony?
So I have a question. So the remedies you have listed there as possible alternatives would be reducing the amount of asphalt and then making it difficult to move trucks back and forth, correct?
Correct.
Okay. How come there was no other?
I didn't catch what you said, Stephen. I'm sorry. It broke up.
I'm sorry. I'm using kind of a crappy headset here. Why is there no alternative to make the building smaller to conform as well?
So at this point, the owner, as they look at expanding, the size that they've picked is kind of indicative of what they would need to make this project even go. If they were to go any smaller, they wouldn't be able to fit the amount of production area that they want to see, and then the amount of storage area for their trucks at night to make the whole project feasible at that point.
Okay, so basically you need that space for current and future fleet sizes.
Correct.
Okay, all right. I think that's the only question I have for this witness.
Thank you, Stephen. Anybody else? Okay, hearing none, I will also ask, thank you for the applicant. We will call you as well if we have additional questions, but at this point, thank you for your testimony. I'm going to turn it over to potential public comments. Is there anybody on the call? I forgot to ask this in the first one, so I apologize. But is there anybody on the call that is from the public that would like to speak or give any testimony for or against this variance request? Okay, all right, so let's move on to deliberation. So board members, again, reminding that the goal of the discussion is to, if we're going to approve, we can put on record with the motion to approve the five elements that he's going to put up on the screen before we deliberate. As per Noel's request. I'll go first. You know, it's interesting in hearing testimony like this contextually, right, against what we just heard. I feel that I could probably speak to, if I was making a motion 1 through 4 on this. Again, 5 I struggle with. because, it's not self-imposed. Is it self-imposed? Yes. If we ask them to change their entire building, right, to conform to the 80%, they probably could, I would say potentially, but I would say that's just not cost effective, right? So is that economic ground? So again, I'm looking to hear my team here kind of talk me through 5, because I feel like I could get through 1 through 4, but 5, I want some deliberation there. That's at least where I'm at. I'm not sure where you guys are at.
So, going through it, preservation of intent, I'm okay with. Exceptional circumstances, obviously, this is an older part of town. These buildings weren't built to code, and it's out of code now.
Okay.
Preservation of property rights, I'm good with that. Absence of detriment. One of the things that did disturb me is the, in the 3 sections that were put in by the applicant, they said that there would be no detriment to public interest, then threaten to remove the business from the area, which is detrimental to the public interest. I found that both offensive and inappropriate, but it does beg the question whether is that an economic consideration for the city that we do not take into account, or should we be taking that into account in terms of the health of the community in general? And maybe legal could help us with that.
It's a great question.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Okay, so in the applicants, if you look at the applicant's actual application, the last section in the 3 justifications is why would not getting the variance reasonably prevent you from using the property? But above, there's one that's asking about why would it be contrary to the public interest? But then in the last section, they essentially say that they'll remove the operations from Green Bay, reducing taxes and taking jobs away from Green Bay. Now that's technically that's an economic consequence, but it's not an economic consequence for Halron. It's an economic consequence for the city of Green Bay. Do we take that into account as part of our deliberations, as we've been instructed to not use economic considerations as part of the decision?
Absolutely not. These decisions should be based on the characteristics of the property. And so while those economic considerations are important to the city as a whole, our job as a board here is to look at the property itself and determine whether those elements are met just based on the property, not based on, like you said, economic.
Okay. Understood. Gotcha. That's no problem. I can handle doing that. So to speak back to Tommy's number 5 point, so the difficulty complying is not self-imposed or based solely on economic grounds. I would have to argue that, at least in my interpretation, that an increasing crime rate in that area is not self-imposed. That is not something that Halron can do anything about, or alternatively, they are doing something about it by putting up another building. So that's where I would go with that. And with that, I will yield.
Thank you, Stephen. Any other comments from the board?
I just want one question about the economic piece. It says in number 5, nor is it based solely on economic grounds. And to me, that says it could be based partially on economic grounds. Is that accurate or not?
I would agree with Barb as far as my interpretation of that. Well, is like you can consider the economic grounds, but they shouldn't be the only factor. There should be all the other factors in combined.
Sure. Yes, I would agree with that. That, however, would still that still wouldn't allow the consideration of an applicant stating that they would remove a tax base or anything like that from the city, because that's not talking about the hardship to the applicant. That's a different economic consideration.
I understand.
The question that Stephen asked earlier about that wasn't related to number 5, it was related to number 4. In my thoughts, is that is the public interest, in this case, maybe we want to see an existing, business continue to be an existing business in the community. Is that the public's interest that that employer, stay in this community? Is that something that's, germane to our decision making here around a request, which is, I think, the right, the variance will not create substantial detriment. Obviously, that's something we got to do to adjacent property, will not materially impair or be contrary to the spirit, purpose, and intent of this chapter or the public interest. So, I mean, and again, maybe not granting a variance in this case, which was the argument that the petitioner was using, could be, argued maybe as detrimental to the public interest. And I think that's what the heart of, if I'm reading Stephen correctly, what he was trying to get at. I don't know that that's something that you want to shoot from the hip on, but that's definitely something I think we could use some more discussion around. I think in terms of the hardship question, I think the some of the things going on in the area, or the growth of business, I can't argue that those things are self-imposed. And I think the compliance around economic grounds, that's like somebody saying, I can't afford to pave a driveway, so don't make it comply, right? That's right. That's the what they're talking about, I think, when we see that, nor is it based solely on economic grounds. If we were asking, them to add more pervious surface, they said, well, we don't have the budget for grass seed, right? Because, I think that's the piece that they're talking about there, not something about public interest in that case.
Yeah, and I would agree.
I would agree.
We've seen it in the inverse as well, when people have done stuff, and it costs them, well, I'm not going to pull it out because it's going to cost me money to comply, right? That inverse, I think we've seen that as well. So I agree with your assessment, Noel, and what Stephen said about 4.
So what's the interesting part of this as well is, since this is adversarial and this is a contention between the city and Halron, and we're here to resolve that one way or the other, it kind of begs the question, considering Halron's stated threat in their application. Does the city want us to approve this?
Yeah, but I don't think we should be considering. We can consider the applicants, we can consider the alternatives, we can consider a lot, but I think if we get into some of that stuff, now we're getting into too much politics, and I think that's stay out of.
It is definitely a thing from a strictly adversarial standpoint. If we're looking at these as opposing sides and us as the binding arbitrator, I honestly think I would be interested to know what the city wants. And I'm not trying to get John to go on record and say what the city wants, because that's a huge. I wouldn't ask him to do that. That would be unfair. But I do think that in these situations, at some point or another, it would be informative for this board to understand the city's position, at least from an economic standpoint, if this comes up again. I don't know that we can do anything about it today, and I'm certainly not going to ask John to speak for the entire city on that matter. But
early on in my journey at the board, I've had a couple situations that are very similar to what you're speaking to, that made me feel a little awkward, like I was being leveraged into a conversation due to threat. And it did not feel good for me. But I was so new on the board that I kind of went along to go along, and then it was just an interesting position. So I definitely appreciate what you're saying, and have been in that spot. I think it was before anybody else was on the board. I can't believe I'm the oldest guy on the board now. Is that right?
I've been here less than a year, and I'm third senior, so that I get where you're sitting.
Wow.
So here's actually a question that will ease my mind a little bit, and legal can answer this for me. Does the city have the right to appeal our decision?
It goes to court, doesn't it? It has to go.
That's what I'm saying. If the city does the city have standing to appeal our decision if they disagree with it, let's say on economic grounds? I know the applicant does, but does the city? Let's say the council says, oh, wow, hey, we can't have Halron not going, so we're going to appeal the board's decision. Is that something that can happen?
The code says any person aggrieved by a decision of the board,
Okay,
that would include the city.
that's
Uh,
perfect, because that gives us an out. If the city doesn't like how this is done or doesn't agree with our logic, they can take it to court and have it reversed.
If I
And that absolves us from, you know,
clarify a few things, Tommy, if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
no, that's great.
So I just, first and foremost, want to remind everyone that you're starting with the ordinance. And again, we're looking at the property and the ordinance's application to the property.
mhm,
Yes, there are any number of arguments that applicants can make, economic or otherwise,
mhm.
that could go to factors other than whether a variance to our municipal code is actually merited. But that's not what the board is here to do. And I understand where the impulse comes from, but try not to think of it as two competing parties and you guys are like the jury awarding, what some kind of, or an arbitrator trying to find some, or mediator trying to find some happy medium. That's not the role of this body.
Okay,
Judge.
so explicitly, that's how you described it in the training. And we are also to take in the public interest. And the public interest is actually for the city as well. So you're not being consistent with this. And if we're down to just the ordinance, I mean, that doesn't even jive with the five items on here. We have to be able to consider more than that.
Even
We
let's
have to.
get through your clarifications real quick. I get, again, where you're coming from, and clarification is what we're going through, right? This whole body has changed in the last 4 months. So I think as we go through, there's gonna be a lot of these questions, but let's let her get through her points real quick, without interruption, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So the point I was making, there's, if you think about like a trial, like a jury trial, there's a fundamental distinction between the role of the jury and the role of the judge. The judge applies the law to whenever motions are made, whenever there's any number of things, the judge is there to enforce the rules. And the jury gets to, we don't have a process in these quasi judicial hearings. There's no role, nobody plays the role of the jury. You guys are here as the judge to enforce the rules. So you are looking at, do the ordinances, does the application meet these criteria for a variance from the standards in the ordinances, which apply equally to everyone in the city? And it's not a question of, I've heard some of you characterize some things as threats or just different ways that different parties present their arguments. That's really your role, is to boil all of that down to what are they actually asking for? What does the property actually look like? Do they meet these elements? And you really, what we're really trying to kind of circle the wagons and streamline the process here, what we're trying to make sure that the board is doing is not considering any of those extraneous things and really only looking at, we start with the ordinance, we start with the presumption that the ordinance is valid and that's what should apply. And do they meet the standards for the variance? There are any number of things that we are very tempted to consider, but the board is limited to considering just what falls within these 5 elements.
Sure. And so 44-141 is an ordinance as well, does it not?
It is.
Okay, so we have to consider public interest. I think the fundamental disconnect between my interpretation of this and yours is that I don't think that, number one, I don't think judges mechanically report the law. I also think that judges use their experience and take into account the wider circumstances in order to make decisions, as well as 44-141 basically demanding that we do that in terms of public interest. All right, we have to consider the uses 50 years down the road. We have to consider uses detriment to the city. We have to consider a lot of these things. And please correct me if I'm wrong on this. I'm feeling you're trying to reduce this to us just looking at the ordinance itself and not taking into account any of the outside factors. And 44-141 would prevent us from doing that as well. If you want us to follow the variances, I'm happy to do that. You know, the code for the variances. But I think that if we stop thinking about what the public interest is, that would be a pretty serious mistake. Because you could just mechanically reject all of these otherwise.
Well, I
I mean,
think,
you're asking us to make a judgment call, yet you're telling us we can't. And I
But I
don't think that that's consistent.
Stephen, I think you're right, and I think there's this good discussion. I don't want to get here, like, I think this is an ongoing kind of thing that we're gonna go through, because I think there's good debate happening. But I would argue that that's part of the reason why we have 5, right? There's 5 quote unquote judges, right? So we're gonna use our judgments, and those
Okay.
judgments might differ, right? And so like the
Mhm.
last one, it was 4 people, and I was 1, right? So I think
Mhm.
by nature, there is going to be a judgment call, and the question is, do they get 3 of those 5 votes? So I think to go through this process and expect all 5 of us to land at the same conclusion, if we were, like you said, mechanically going through it, I think that would be the case. But I'm hopeful as we go through this training and we get better at all this, that we will see more split votes, 3-2s, 4. We won't always be just 5-0s, because
Mhm.
we're applying our judgment and our interpretation. So I think you're okay to have some of your interpretations, and we'll have some guidance from legal occasionally. And I think that's what a great debate is for. So I do think we should move on, though.
Understood. I'll rest that point.
Thank you, Stephen. Great points, though. Seriously, good discussion from both people and everything. And I think, thank you for the applicant for your patience. Noel, I see your hand. Let's move forward.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going to be trying to go. So thanks, Tommy.
Just to move us forward. Thanks, Noel. All right, Vice Chair coming in. I love it. Thank you, buddy. All right, so we're going through 1 through 5. Are we ready to take a motion on an approval, a denial? More discussion around, again, I
have something.
go ahead, Barb.
But, you know, because you were struggling with number 5, I think you said. And so I was thinking about preservation of property rights as it applied to number 5, because it's necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of the same substantial property rights possessed by other properties in the same district and vicinity. And so that I was thinking that would mean that it isn't a self-imposed hardship. They're actually going to fewer feet. A smaller area is going to be covered. I'm not sure how I'm making my point, but I was looking at 3 and thinking, yeah, I don't think it's a self-imposed, and I don't think it's based solely on economic grounds. So I was feeling okay with that, but not sure I'm expressing it very well.
Okay, thanks, Barb. Noel?
Yeah, I'd be willing to craft a motion here with some expression around these tests. I think that granting a variance in this case isn't inconsistent with the spirit, purpose, or intent of the general industrial district. I do think that there are some exceptional circumstances or unusual circumstances that apply to this lot. Double fronted, adjacent to a railroad right of way, in an older, more densely developed part of town, perhaps with much of that development occurring prior to modern land use controls and other things, at least in its its history. And so that we've got some different things going on here. I think it's should be an expectation of somebody who operates a permitted use in a district to be able to grow their use, to grow their business, to enjoy the ability to have their trucks come and go and do what have you. Those are rights possessed by other properties in that district and vicinity, and I think that the variance is necessary, and that they need, I think their desire to enclose more of the property and park some trucks indoors and things like that is a business need that and the variance is necessary for that. I don't know that there's any sort of detriment to the public interest. It's certainly increasing the amount of green space at this property, I don't believe in any way is a detriment to adjacent properties, nor will it materially impair or be contrary to the spirit, purpose, and intent or of the public interest. I think having more pervious surface, even though it's still not fully compliant, is a step in the right direction. And is a good thing. And I'll tip my hat to the broader question we were talking about. I don't think it would be in the public's interest for the community to not explore cooperation with somebody who's trying to run a business and employ good people and be a part of our economic situation. But that's not the principal reason, as the others, as I just said. And then I think that the hardship, the difficulty in complying with the municipal code, in this case, complying with, the impervious surface requirements, isn't self-imposed. It's something that they've already been out of compliance. We don't know since how long. Was that since before zoning existed? What have you? So it's there now. And it exists, and there's certainly not an economic necessary factor in it. It's really about the way they run the business on the property, and they're changing it for the better. And I think that they're accommodating as much as they can in terms of the reduction in impervious surface, and I think that's a good step. And I would move that we grant the variance as requested.
Noel, you're a poet, man. Thank you.
No, before you go too far, I wanted to address John's point. John, you wanted some conditions put on this. Have you thought of another way?
And I would move that we grant the variance as requested. And should the use at the property ever not include freight handling or semi-truck traffic, that the variance be rescinded.
Right. So when we discuss land uses, part of why I guess it was say vague right there is to go ahead and not pinpoint the exact thing as far as what they do.
Yeah, we should probably get a second on the motion before we discuss it.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Again, well done. And I appreciate you always kind of jumping in with this new exercise and getting us through that. So thank you for that.
And I understand it may not be articulated the way John would like it, or staff would like it. But I think in absence of, unless, it's like, unless the use changes from SIC code X or Y, or something like that, this thing wouldn't comply. I guess just saying something like, hey, if somebody's going to buy it someday and turn it into a, artist studios or housing or who knows what, that would trigger the change. But if the next user of that property is going to have trucks coming and going, I think they should continue to be able to be covered by the same variance we're granting tonight.
Okay.
If I could, Tony.
Is Noel able to go, or not Noel? John. Please.
Yeah. So just as a board, and unless there might be some different interpretation, but you can go ahead and place. I think it's a warranted addition to this request. When we are speaking of uses, as far as general industrial, this site is how we interpret what Halron is doing down there, to not try to go ahead and fit them here in the future, as far as saying they are a heavy industrial use or a a use that was more of a general industrial use. We didn't want to go ahead and place it on to stating the exact use they have down there. But I think what you've done there is content and fine to state as far as the semi-truck traffic to what this means to the overall intent of the property here now and 20, 30 years in the future. I
Yeah,
certainly
and-
know that with where we're coming from, but we're trying to also keep this to not pinpoint it so much as to harm Halron in its existing use right now, to say this is what they do exactly, because they do a variety of industrial.
Yeah, my intent was to say, look, if the use requires semi trucks to come and go, this one or any future one, that's fine. If somebody comes in later and says, oh boy, we're gonna be able to park 1 million cars in all that concrete for our retail operation or something like that, that would trigger, an end of this, approval, and they'd have to talk with you guys about it.
Yes.
Well, I am here to make friends tonight, clearly.
Uh-oh, here we go. That's good. All right.
So, yes, the ordinance permits the board to put conditions on variances that are granted. However, those variances should relate to the way that the property is being allowed to differ from the code. So again, like, for example, on that previous property, the first item that we had earlier, if the board had said, you can have the variance, but instead of 0 setback, you have to have a 1 foot setback. That would have been an appropriate condition. A condition on the use of the property is not the same as a condition, as a variance from the zoning requirements, essentially within, recognizing that there are uses that are permitted within certain zones, etc. That's not, that's, sorry guys, too much talking tonight. Story of my life. So the variance is supposed to be justified because of the conditions of the land, not the use that is being made of the land. So again, you can have conditions on if you permit a variance, you can permit certain changes to what the applicant is asking for. But if we're talking about conditional uses, that's a conditional use permit. That's a completely different thing. You go to plan commission for that.
That's fair.
That's true.
Condition property sale.
I would move the condition I tacked on to the end of my motion, if that's okay with the second.
Yeah. We should withdraw it, right?
Yeah, withdraw that last bit, just about
Right.
the use.
Yeah.
No.
Sorry, John.
Then I would also suggest that I think that you guys at the city need to talk about this a little bit, because we put these kind of conditions on a lot of properties, even in the year I've been here. So,
We did. We have.
and it also takes a big tool out of John's toolbox to be able to not ask for these things in the future. And if the goal is to get the city in more in compliance with our own codes, that's not consistent either. So.
Yeah,
And certainly make it part of a larger conversation.
yeah, I think we should move on so the applicant can move forward. I think, again, this process that we're going through is going to warrant a lot of discussion, and we get to be the ones that go through it as a team. Woo! So
I thought that was fair. That's about that. This is stuff that Plan Commission needs to wrangle with in terms of future land use plans and the vision for the site and the zoning and things like that down the road. So I get it, and I want to do the thing that John's talking about, but I agree with the opinion from legal, and so I think that withdrew it. Barb, you're okay with withdrawing it, so
I am.
maybe we should have a motion then.
good with removing it, but warranted maybe some future discussion.
Absolutely.
Copy that. Everybody good spot? Let's move forward. Okay. Good. All right. So we have a motion on the floor to approve the variance as requested. I think Noel did a good job going through the 5 ideas as he put it through. We have Barb that seconded it. We are ready to take a vote if there is no more discussion. Okay, John, let's go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of approving the variance as requested, say aye.
I,
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, so Brandon, again, thank you so much for your patience. I totally understand that you sat there and watched us kind of work through some stuff. So thank you very much for sitting there, and you are good to go. Just continue, please, to work with John and the team here at the city to kind of move forward and make sure everything goes to plan, okay?
Thanks, everyone. Will do.
All right, and those others that were on the call, thank you again for your patience and joining in. We're going to go ahead and close the floor.
move to close the floor.
Okay.
Okay, I have a motion by Noel to close the floor and a second by Corey. All those in favor?
I,
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay, great. All right, thank you, guys. All right, so we are through the regular business. We do have some informational. I know, Noel, you have to go at 6:30, so we have you for a couple more minutes here. I just want to say before we get into that, Stephen, everybody on the call, Noel, thank you for the discussion and being part of all of this stuff. It is a major change for those that have been on the board prior. And so I do appreciate, personally, I appreciate all the debate. I think it's going to make this better in the long run. So thank you.
And I hope everyone realizes that what I'm trying to do here is to help with clarity, both for myself and for other things that provide consistency. None of this is personal. There's no animosity in any of this. I want us to get to a point where we have a clear understanding of what we're doing and can justify it mentally, right? Be able to say, yes, I understand this and I understand the ramifications. So thank you very much.
I love it. Thank you. All right, everybody good? Go through some training here. John, you're up. Is it you or is it legal?
Well, first, this was legal. They have nothing planned in particular, but
Right.
if there's any conversation we want to have here,
I don't have anything planned in the interest of respecting all of your time, because I think as the conversations progress this evening, there are several things that I just plain need to look into further before I just off the cuff provided additional advice on some of these areas. Sorry, I swear I'm not sick. It's just long COVID. It's a treat. Not contagious, I guess. Is the,
so glad I did virtual tonight.
You have my sympathies. My wife has it as well. So
thank you. And I guess first of all, let me just echo what Stephen said. I appreciate the debate, and I appreciate all of you bringing these issues to my attention, because I haven't been advising the board as long as you've all been on it. So I am grateful for having these discussions, and I guess that's in lieu of any kind of formal training and respecting everyone's time this evening. My only question, or my only thing, is a question to all of you, and just what are some topics that do come up a lot that you might benefit from more specialized training on, because we can certainly provide that.
Yeah, I think a deeper dive into the public interest with quotes around it as it relates to our actions.
Sure.
I would add on number 2, towards the end, it says, and I'm jumping to the end, or uses in the same district. And the variance is not of so general or recurrent a nature to suggest that this chapter should be changed.
yeah.
Dry and industrial districts.
That was something that we debated before, but it led to this idea that we were being legislative. But at the same time, I do still firmly believe that there is a benefit to this board, to planning, to whoever votes on the code. That if we're seeing stuff and the world changes, right? And this is a great feedback loop to the community, to the city. And God knows we want the community to think that the city is easy to work with, and that we can do the right thing and we can protect the code, but we're also moving the city forward to be forward thinking. And so I don't know what that process looks like. I read that and I was like, oh, that brings me back. So I would love to have a bit more debate or discussion around how we can feedback loop this board. I think it's
I have
critical.
some thoughts on that, Tommy, and I had actually been meaning to, I don't know, get lunch with you and talk about ideas around that. And maybe one day when I can walk again, I'll do that.
Yeah, let me know, man. My schedule's pretty flexible, but I love that. And I don't think that's out of the purview of us getting.
No,
together.
no, it wouldn't be discussing anything in specific on cases,
Love it.
just procedural stuff.
Love it. Email, you have my email, so email me anytime, man. I love it.
I will. It's gonna be a month or two, if I'm being honest.
All right.
I did have one other question. Do we have any insight on getting another alternate for the board?
Okay, he said he's gonna get into that. Any other topics for legal that we would like to go through or have them put on the queue for debate or something?
Thank
Okay,
you all so
I
much.
made enough trouble for tonight.
okay, great.
If you do think of anything, feel free to email John and or myself or Logan. We'll add it to the list.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you.
For both of you coming and being here and,
We're gonna stay through the end.
no, I know, but guiding, I appreciate it. All right, John, the floor is yours, bud.
6:19, let's wrap this up by 6:30 then. for
Yeah,
everyone.
no, we get 11
Yeah,
minutes. Let's go.
yes. So just discussion on procedural items. So we hit basements a bit last time. Just want to go ahead and expand some more. So, you know, we had 2 items here this month. I think in part of that is because we had more discussions with folks to describe alternatives and find different ways to make projects happen. Not that it wasn't happening in the past, but there's been more of an emphasis on it to go ahead and try to find ways to make this work. I could say from our first items here, we drill it down to just having 2 variance requests from the code, you know, going to the alternatives as far as what they want to do initially. There have been many requests, but we got that down to just go ahead and get it down to 2 requests.
Let me make sure that's clear for everybody. Would you be willing to offer, like, if we weren't doing that work, how many we would have potentially seen tonight?
Well, we would have talked to them about this to say, you can make this better. We would have said this initially, but I can say there were requests initially to go ahead and put into the front yard setback as well. And requests to potentially change around the driveways and stuff. So it's would have, we made some progress to go ahead and get to where we're at.
That's
on
good.
On that site. What we want to do here in the future is Tom and I had a conversation back in September about this, trying to make the application process better for the applicant itself. So we're looking to go ahead and make some changes. So right now, if you see the application form, there's a cover letter, and then there's a 4 or 5 page application that is sometimes really well done and other times not.
Very cool.
We're going to go ahead and change up the cover letter itself to be a bit more straightforward. Still, we are going through a quasi-judicial process. We can't be completely just basic, but we try to make it as basic as we could to go to the points of what is a variance, what is this whole ZBA thing? Nobody deals with the ZBA in normal life. Going back to those 3 issues, the board itself takes the 5, but if you can go ahead and say, I have an unnecessary hardship, you need proper limitation, and I'm protecting the public interest, if you can go ahead and argue those things, it should be applicable to the 5 in general.
John, can I just push back a little bit on that, on just the unnecessary hardship? You know, we talk about that and we say, okay, what's your hardship? But the way all the language looks like it's written is complying with the ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship, right? That's kind of what it says, right? If we go to those 5 points again, it's like, you know, it's like what is, and it can't be self-imposed and it can't be, you know, based solely on economic grounds, but it's like, you know, when I see the words unnecessary hardship, or I see that language or hardship in these requests, I think a lot of people reading that start going down the path of, well, my sick brother is living with me, or this, that, or the other thing. And that's not what we're trying to get to, right? We're trying to get to the fact that you know, my lot's too small and I don't have enough driveway space. And so if I comply with these rules, I can't park a car here where I really ought to be able to park a car. That's the hardship that I'm facing.
So
if I'm forced to comply with your rules, you know.
I mean, that makes great sense, but if you remember that lady with the duplex who we approved because she was, because she had a hardship, because she needed to be able to put her wheelchair ramp out, I don't feel bad about that decision. And I don't think that we need to get to the point where we can't consider things like that.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the way it's written, we start getting people thinking about their problems,
Oh,
not
fair
about
enough.
the zoning thing, right?
Fair enough.
Is there a
Right,
way
well-
we can write that zeroes them more in on the zoning and the reason they are coming to us to request a variance?
Like for example.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna note, like, so.
I don't know. I mean, you obviously don't want to fill the whole page with text or
Yeah.
make a 2-page cover letter, but is
I
there, just, I see that all the time and folks start talking about, their stick Aunt Matilda or something like that, and that's not really what we're trying to get to.
Yeah, that for example case would work for some of the work that I do where people ask for a credit hardship, like the state of Michigan and underwriting there. State of Michigan defines a hardship as X, Y, and Z. So if we can put some more definition, like these are the types of hardships we're looking for, that would be helpful.
I like that, because I actually struggle here, in trying to continue to learn. 2 and 5 kind of blend for me on that sheet. Exceptional circumstances, exceptional, extraordinary, unusual circumstances or conditions apply to the lot or the intended use, right, of that property, right? So right there, the property is creating the hardship of what I want to do and use like they all kind of start blending together for me. And so then I'm like, okay, if I'm required, and thank you, Noel, because I think you've been doing a good job of going through each one, but there are times where you're talking, I'm like, okay, well, he's talking about 4 in 2, right? And so maybe that could be something we do in terms of training or whatever, is really drilling down. If this is something that's being provided to boards all over the country, this idea of 5 things, right? There's clearly got to be a distinction of why 1 exists separate from 5. Is that
That is our code right there.
right?
So that's-
Yeah,
I have a hard time being able to say the distinction between 2 and 5 are completely separate based on my understanding. Doesn't mean there isn't. I'm dumb. You know what I mean? So right now I'm either failing to understand the distinction or there is bleed there. And that's where we're running into some of these issues. Going back to even what Stephen was talking about with 4 or 5, we're kind of murky in all of these. So maybe some training there, really defining the distinction between all of these.
Could
You know,
like
the-
number 2 be clarified with like exceptional physical circumstances? Like thinking about it that way, where like hardship is more, I mean, it's saying it's not solely on economic, but it's more, that's the context, like the wheelchair piece or like the other brothers. So it's like, is there a way to think about it? Is that definition work where 2 is more the physical aspects of it, where 5 is the stuff to consider?
What's interesting about that, Corey, is I think you're onto something, but when I went through my training that was done by the state college or whatever, they came to Illinois with, they were so clear about the idea that you take the person out and you focus on the lot and perpetuity. So the decision about the grounds, the physical property, and if this changes 4 hands, that this variance still exists regardless of who's living there. And they were super clear. Now, that doesn't necessarily, I'm just saying, that's what I walked away from.
yeah. The training that I took, and I think Barb took it too back, I think it was back in April or May.
Mhm.
The big difference between that and this, they only had 3 conditions. And I think I think maybe less is more is probably part of the problem here. I know we can't do anything about what's already written into the code, but I think that's part of the reason we're having blending it and why maybe other cities in the country don't have 5 conditions, they only have 3. I think what we should, that lady had a book on this. She wrote a whole book from the UW about doing these things, and I haven't gotten a copy of it yet, but it seems to me that all of them were just the 3 that are on the original application sheet,
That
not the
sounds like
5 we
something that
have
would be
here.
really helpful for our city partners to purchase for us.
Ha,
Yeah,
I love it.
With whose money, Noel?
Yeah, I think they cut that from the budget.
Hey,
They
you
cut
can't
that.
base it solely on economic grounds, so.
It's like
yeah.
a category, wasn't there, in the budget? Just kidding. Anyway, all right. I think that's, again, good feedback for city and legal.
Yep.
Because again, we're quasi getting to legislative stuff, but again, I think if Steven's right, because I remember going through the training and there was 3. So when this popped
Yeah.
out 5, I was like, well, why is our application 3? Right? And I remember grabbing those 3 specifically from that training.
Yeah.
So again, I just think this is good debate and discussion to say maybe there is a way to simplify, streamline, create some distinction, create some examples
Right.
on there. So this is good discussion in my opinion. So thank you.
So we can change up those.
Folks, I'm sorry, I have to leave.
You know,
All right.
Thank
All right, Noel,
Bye-bye.
Yeah,
we failed you. I'm sorry, Noel, we failed. He was gone.
He's
Boom.
good.
That's it. All right.
Okay, so we'll wrap it up here. Just as an FYI for the application, we can look into the 3 questions, because that's what we've based this on as far as folks answering those 3 questions themselves. The differences from before is before we had no reference to has your site plan been reviewed by planning staff? So it's simple yes or no. If you have not, you're not turning this application in because you need to talk to us. With that, we will explore the alternatives with folks to try to avoid coming to this Board of Appeals
Unprepared.
unprepared, or if there could be an alternative at all, just say, we do not need to do this. Some folks may have the idea that they can do it. Turns out we could have a pretty simple solution to go ahead and just make things work that would work within the code itself. And that's what we're trying to go ahead and do to limit the amount of items in front of this board.
I like,
So that has been added to this. We've taken out the alternatives because we didn't feel it was fair to the people who are trying to go ahead and do an actual application to say, here are the alternatives that could work, and we're not doing it. So we're gonna have a discussion during the actual site plan review. The rest of the application itself is just adding in this 4th or part 4, what we've been discussing here. This was never brought up in the actual application itself. The 5 criteria to go ahead and meet. It's stated there now that for the ZBA, you have to meet that as part of chapter 44. So were there any questions as far as this goes right now, or?
no, excellent work by you and your staff.
Yes, John, thank you. I
So
know-
then, yeah, 3 more things real quick before we wrap up. So first, want to acknowledge Tom's not here today.
Tom Hoy.
Tom White, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I hope he hears this. Thank him for his service on the board. And can go ahead and see you on the way.
He sent me, and maybe I should have shared this, and I apologize because I didn't even think of it till now, but he was vocally very upfront about kind of his desire to resign. I didn't think that, he sent me an email saying I'm formally resigning, and I probably should have forwarded that off, so I apologize. I just was like, I walked away with the
I think we got
assumption.
it too.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
we all got it, I think.
I did send him a
I
nice
got it.
I sent a nice email back, and then I did speak to the mayor, and I think it's something we could do better about, I mean, how many years? It was over 15 years. And Don also retired from the board, these are volunteer things. So I haven't had the chance to follow up with the mayor on it, but I just think it's super important that somehow the city recognizes volunteers that serve for that long. And he did a lot of great work, and you could tell, he cared, he genuinely cared, and change is hard sometimes. So I really appreciated the work that he did, and was sad to see him go.
I have your sentiments on that. Yeah. And as far as new members, we have received 1 application of interest to the board. So
Okay, and the mayor reviews that and then makes a decision.
Correct.
Or his staff, whatever.
yes, yep.
Okay.
So that's our status right now. And then if folks, from now on, this is hybrid. So this is both in person and virtual. So if folks do want to be down here on 4:30 on the 3rd Monday of each month, usually, sometimes it's 4th. Feel free. Or if you feel comfortable being at home, also feel free. It is your call on that. With that in mind, we do need to resolve getting some parking passes for folks.
Yeah, I was
So-
gonna tell you, for some of you that are newer to the board, the staff here can provide like a placard for you to park at City Hall, so you don't have to pay the $1.50 or whatever it is for the meter. Just see Jessica, and she'll be able to get it for you. Just here at the city, and they'll give you a little, and just keep it in your car, you drop it on the rear view mirror. We used to all have them when we would meet. There was no hybrid option, so.
Yeah, they're still sending those out. When I joined, I got the application. I had to renew it again. So I don't know if Corey got one.
I got a whole bunch of email stuff. I remember looking through it and I think that was in there and I didn't look at it further than that because I'm like, hey, I'm virtual at the moment. So
Cool. Well, I would appreciate, I mean, we're wrapping up here, right? Is that it?
Yep, that would be it right there, yes.
Again, I've said it a couple of times. I appreciate everybody going through this, all the discussion, and all the work the city staff is doing to be here, jumping up and being quasi interpreter. I do think that's an interesting note that we shouldn't lose sight of as we have a more diverse community. Is there a note in the application? You know, I don't know, like where you might need translation services. I don't think the city has that on staff. So do we say like, if translation services are needed, you know, you are required to bring, you know, I don't know how that works from a legal perspective. Can you require people to do that? I don't know.
I mean, that's something the city should be providing.
I agree. It definitely is.
I want to say there was something in the budget about that, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think just,
Well, if
I know.
we could at least get a heads up, I mean, I know people who speak fluent Spanish who might be willing to volunteer their time if we just know that it's gonna happen. So
that was what I was, if we notify them on the application, maybe there's a volunteer option, you know, to the
Yeah.
board. If you come in and do that, and then we would just trigger that as an alternative, right? You know,
Yes, as a general matter, it's absolutely a due process concern, and that's like we talked about last week, or last month. I don't know, time means nothing to me anymore. Sorry, Tommy.
you almost got a spit take. Wow.
As like we talked about last time, one of the reasons why we're focusing on quasi judicial training is to make sure due process rights are protected. And it's really difficult to do that if we're not all speaking the same language.
Yeah.
So
Right.
these are really, these points are really well taken, and it's definitely something that I'm going to bring up.
Great. All right, look at all the stuff we unpacked today, guys. Great work tonight. Anything else anybody wants to go over?
This is where you shut it down, Tommy.
I do have one
Yeah.
quick question because I
I
was-
move to adjourn.
I'm waiting for a motion, but Corey's got his.
I just
hand
have one quick question because I'm
Oh,
still
right.
considered an alternate. What does that mean? Like, I mean, since Tom's position is open, is that something that I have, or what is, I guess, where I'm at right now? Because this is what, my fourth overall meeting since I joined in July.
So for right now, you
Mayor.
continue to serve as a full member. If you would like to be appointed to the permanent spot, that's something that I can talk to the mayor about, and then whoever the new appointee is could be appointed as the alternate. Otherwise, normally the spot that gets filled is just whatever spot was vacated.
Okay.
So the new person would just go into Tom's spot. If Tom wasn't the alternate, then that person would not be an alternate, but that's very easy to change if your preference would be to no longer be the alternate. It's a conversation that you can have with staff and with the mayor's office.
At a future. meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to.
I just,
right now.
no, I just didn't know if I'm just called up as a reliever or something like that consistently, or do I get promoted as a starter? That's what I was looking at. So I'll stick with the reliever for the moment. So, and I'll second Barb's motion to adjourn.
Is that the whole process? Like that's how it goes? The slot is vacated, or can we change?
You
that?
know, when Noel, not Noel, he's an alder now. I can't remember his name.
Jim Hutchison.
Yeah, Jim Hutchison. When Jim left, I was just promoted to the board. I never asked.
That's
So,
Usually you have to ask. I've been an alternate before on.
okay, all right.
And then you just.
I mean, I'd asked anyway,
Send
so
an
it
email.
didn't bother me. So,
Yeah, it gets approved by council. I mean,
okay.
alternate changes to regular. So there's a process. I'm sending you an email, Corey.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I have a motion on the floor to adjourn. I can't remember who it was. Do you have one?
Barb motioned, I say.
Corey? Thank you, good job. All right, anybody have any more discussion? All those in favor to adjourn, say aye.
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 Bye.
No, 4-0. Okay, thank you again, everybody, for going through all of this. I appreciate all of your time. It will be worth
Thank
it,
you.
long term, I promise.
Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Happy
Oh,
Thanksgiving all.
Everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.